Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, where all things football are injected right to your veins. With your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
What is up, and welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Team Spotlight Series. The next edition, we are here to talk about the Denver Broncos. And as you can see, if you're joining us on the live stream, we've got an all-star cast here. I'm really excited to be joined by them. But before I introduce them to you, just want to introduce the show. We are going through every single team, all 32, and we're just talking about some of the ins and outs of what we can expect from the team. When January, February starts to come, most people in Dynasty League start to focus on the rookies, and obviously we need to do that. The rookies are very important, but we also need to understand the teams that they find themselves in. They're going to get drafted somewhere. Let's talk about the coordinators. Let's talk about the systems, and let's just talk about the teams. And nobody better to do that than people who understand football, smart people who also are fans of the team, because nobody knows your team the way that you do. So to help us accomplish that today, we've got two of my favorite people on Twitter right here. Linda, I want to start with you. Go ahead, introduce yourself, and where can we find you and your work?
Oh, God, everywhere. If you're on Twitter, you've likely crossed paths with me more than once. But particularly Wednesdays, you can find me at Fantasy Football Confidential. Usually we go live about 8 p.m. Eastern, but because we've got some special guests lined up. Yeah, yesterday was very different. We went live extremely early, but so I'm not sure what time, but you can follow them on Twitter at ff_confidential. I also do live Mondays at 7:15 Eastern with at Fantasy Besties. And we met through the Scott Fish Bowl. We just talked incessantly all the time. We started meeting up and just chatting. And one day we were like, why don't we just do this live? And, we're already here. So, and I write for Fantasy's Sake on Twitter too. So you can find me everywhere.
Yeah, if you were on Twitter yesterday, you almost certainly saw Linda. As I think the last I saw, there was about 4 billion people that have viewed the video of you guys talking to the talented Mr. Roto, which was awesome. I really enjoyed that, by the way. So, and to join us to talk about the Broncos is Nate. I'm going to butcher your last name. Can you please just tell me how to say it?
So it's Paul Vote, like politics and vote.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Paul Vote.
I should have taken Jen's last name. It's Johnson.
Oh yeah.
There's still time though, so maybe I might have to switch that up. But so you can find me at JackFF on Twitter. I write for In Between Media. I do podcasts and live stream with In Between Media. I am their senior digital media coordinator, and I am proud to be a huge part of what Seth Woolcock has done with In Between Media. You can find us on Twitter at IBT_media. We're on Facebook. We've got our YouTube channel. Would love it if you'd go subscribe. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. We're firing up 4 new shows for the offseason. We've got a DFS golf show that we're starting up. We've got a guy who's our buddy Connor. I've known him for about 14 years. Jen went to high school with him. Really good with the golf, good with football too. Focusing on golf now. We've got some NASCAR stuff and just some general life stuff. So check us out. And then I do the Thursday Blitz game show with Join Our Circle, among other things. So I'm kind of all over the place right now too.
And you came up with a lot of those questions today, right?
Those were all me. Well, they were myself and my wife at Jen Paul Vote on Twitter. I'd like to give her a quick shout out because she's awesome. And I could not do any of this without her. She's seriously she is absolutely my better half. And she types out all the questions for me because I type like this. And
I can confirm that. She's definitely the better of the two.
We all agree with that. It goes without saying right there.
Yeah. So if you don't know her, go follow her. She is at Jen Paulvote on Twitter.
Yeah. Seriously, make sure you're following these guys. Make sure you are subscribed to their YouTube channels. You are going to enjoy yourself if you do those things, no doubt. And I am looking forward to enjoying ourselves tonight as we talk about the Denver Broncos because, look, 5-11 last year, but it was such a weird year. This is not indicative of what it's like to be a Denver Broncos fan. Linda, talk a little bit about did you grow up a Broncos fan? Did you did that come on later? Tell me about that.
I got here accidentally. Okay. I live in Oklahoma. We don't have an NFL team. My best friend growing up, I met her in 3rd grade. She was a Broncos fan. So anytime I stayed the night on a Saturday, we woke up on a Sunday, I'd be like, go Broncos, I guess, because I'm here. And then when I started playing fantasy football before I started watching Red Zone and learning all the teams and everything. And so because I had that from childhood, I was like, I'm a Broncos fan. And I was a Broncos fan starting about Peyton Manning era. So I missed a lot. I certainly don't have the deep rooted, but I did the blowout to the Seahawks pregnant. So let me that was special. That was a good day for me. But then I got to celebrate a Super Bowl 2 years later. So you win some, you lose some. But I'm not as deep rooted as all Broncos fans are.
So the Jake Plummer days, all that kind of missed you there.
Yeah, missed me. I mean, I was I knew in vagueness, but I couldn't talk about it like I can talk about stuff now.
Nate, how about you?
Oh, I was born into this, man. I grew up maybe a mile from the Denver County border in the suburbs. So we were 20 minutes to downtown Denver, 15 minutes to the stadium, maybe at the most. I've been a Broncos fan since I was old enough to know what football was. I remember those 3 Super Bowl losses in the 80s. Those are some of my earliest sports memories. And that was hard, man. It was hard to go every year and not get in. But I mean, I go all the way back to my first quarterback was John Elway. So he was drafted the year after I was born.
Heard of him. He's pretty
Heard
good.
of him. Yeah, he's all right. He has a reputation in this town that we'll not talk about tonight. But
I've got some Elway notes. I've got some notes. We'll talk some Elway. But
all right.
I want to talk about 2020 because I think 20, 25 years from now, I've got if I have grandkids at that point and they're like, tell me what the NFL in 2020 was like. Of all the things that happened, I almost feel like a team playing a whole game without a starting quarterback is going to have to be the one thing I remember. So just talk a little bit about is that the thing that sticks out the most from 2020 for you? Is there, I guess, more to the story? But Nate, I'll start with you and then Linda follow up after.
That's probably the craziest story of this entire season, I think, period. I mean, given a year where we're fighting a pandemic and there are no fans in the stands and we have players out for a week to 2 to Raquel Armstead missed the whole season because of it. But that was crazy. We're talking about a practice squad wide receiver being promoted on Saturday to play a position he hasn't played since he was a sophomore in college. And he was from where? Was it Purdue or Vanderbilt or something like that? But I mean, that was crazy. That was crazy. The Broncos tried to sign 2 of their offensive coaches to play quarterback on that Saturday. And when the NFL said no, I mean, they didn't have another choice. So that was that's the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen in a football game. Maybe in my entire life.
The year was so wild though that when you bring that up, it's oh my God, that happened. It's almost unfathomable because other teams, I won't name names, got pushed around so that they could at least have an option. And for them to be nope, don't know what to tell you. You're okay, that's good. I love that for us. But the whole season for the Broncos was a disaster, to put it nicely, between injuries and mostly that.
So injury is obviously part of the story. What else is part of that story, Nate? Why did 2020 not go the way that Broncos fans would hope?
So Drew Lock, I mean, more picks than touchdowns. That's never a good stat. The Broncos they turned the ball over like crazy. Melvin Gordon got butter hands there for a minute. Not having Phillip Lindsay really healthy, I think, hurt really bad. Not having Von Miller. Courtland Sutton was out. Mm-hmm. You lose Ogwin Bonham, who I thought was going to be a big part of that offense, to an ACL tear. God, I can't even remember all the guys that got hurt, but it was insane. I mean, not 49ers insane, but like you're talking about key guys. Von Miller not being in that pass rush hurt them more than I thought it could, honestly.
Right.
Go ahead.
After a year where everybody was like hating on Von Miller, he was doubled. I mean, he had an insane thing to deal with in 2019 because 2018 was such a strong season for Von. And so everybody last year wrote him off. Well, then he wasn't there this year, and you can see what a difference that makes to that defense. That's why he's key. Just because he doesn't have 20 sacks or whatever the insane amount he had was, doesn't mean he's not a key part of that defense. And I think this year proved that to all the fans that were ready to write him off after 2019.
Absolutely. Well, and then losing Chris Harris and Derek Wolfe in free agency, that sucked too.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Courtland Sutton because I think like after the draft, when you started thinking about like, oh gosh, we're going to have Courtland Sutton and we're going to have Jerry Jeudy and then KJ Hamler, who I really like a lot. Mm-hmm. And then you know, even this guy that, you thought, okay, he could be a good fourth was Tim Patrick. He wound up being the best wide receiver on the team basically for the year. Noah Fant. And, and honestly, like I even had high hopes. I thought Pat Shurmur coming over was going to be a good thing. Like I liked what he did with Daniel Jones when he was in New York. Like there were a lot of things about him but obviously that didn't go well either. Almost like he, did it seem like at times, Linda, let me ask you this. Did it seem at times like he was holding the offense back, holding Drew Lock back and not letting him be who he really is?
Yeah, Drew Lock clearly thrived in a get up and go offense that's, not having to sit and think about it, which is, I think, fine if you can play like that. And they slowed that offense down, I think, too much for somebody that plays like Drew Lock would like to play. Because anytime it was a hurry up offense, you're like, oh, see what he can do? See what happened? When he wasn't overthinking it. And as an overthinker, I identify with that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So I did, honestly, the same thing that Linda just said. You saw when they ran the hurry up offense, like when they were behind in the fourth quarter, they made some of those like almost comebacks. Locke looked like the quarterback we all thought he was going to be.
Yep.
And it was just frustrating me so bad that Shurmur wouldn't speed that offense up for him for the entire game. Because he was clearly more comfortable. He was making less mistakes because he wasn't having to check down. And I think when they slowed the offense down, Locke felt like he had to do the Peyton Manning thing and try and be Peyton Manning behind center. When nobody's ever going to be Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Those guys are on a completely different level when it comes to managing a game. They don't need an offensive coordinator. They're their own offensive coordinator. Drew Lock needs a fast-paced offense where he's told what to do and has two options. He's got two guys, and if things go really horribly, then he bails on the play, gets out of the pocket, and makes something happen. Because we saw him do that repeatedly, and he was good at it. And it's so weird to me because Shurmur did that with Daniel Jones, and he's known for liking those guys that get out of the pocket and move around. But he just didn't do that. And I don't know if that's Fangio, maybe some influence from Fangio or what that was,
or some influence from maybe John Elway. And that's obviously a pretty big story this season is he is, I guess, trying to take a step back. I'm going to be really curious to see how much of a step back he really takes, but it sounds like he's going to, remove himself a little bit, at least partially. He said that the new GM, George Patton, he is kind of the guy. We know that they were already in a little bit on trying to get Matthew Stafford. They're coming up in a lot of rumors right now, but they decided to make the decision to keep Vic Fangio around and keep Pat Shurmur in that OC spot. And, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, Nate, I'll kick it back to you. How confident are you in this front office and coaching staff?
Well, with moving John Elway out of the GM role, I'll go to a 6. that might be a stretch, but yeah, I'll say 6.
Linda?
Well, now I'm going to sound like a copycat. That's not fair. You should have come to me first. I don't
6.1.
like. I'm not ready to give up on Fangio. I don't want to. We're already in a quarterback carousel. I don't want to do a coach carousel. I don't want to change everything. If Drew Lock is still the quarterback next year, I want him to be with the same coach and the same OC to see and stay healthy all season to see if that is part of the factor. Changing all the time is not the answer, I'm pretty sure. Trying to unlock some kind of code with coaches and positional coaches and everything, just give it some time, which is the same advice I gave to Dynasty owners that were selling rookies that didn't perform in the first 4 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, patience. That definitely it seems to pay off for a lot of teams to do it, especially if you got the right guy and you believe in them. And 6 doesn't inspire that much confidence, but I think there are some decisions that they're going to have to make when it comes to some really important players on their team. So, for instance, they've got Von Miller. They got a club option coming up on him. He's 32 years old. He's
under investigation for felony domestic assault right now.
Yeah,
it's not looking good.
He's not had a great, for somebody that I was always like, I love him. He's had a real rough couple months.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I think he's gone.
Yeah, I do too.
That's what I was going to ask. You don't think he's in a Bronco uniform next year?
Mm-mm.
I don't think that if what is being reported is true, they can't keep him.
I was already pretty sure he wasn't going to be, based on age and money that needs to be allocated elsewhere. But that, just even the rumors alone, I don't think he's going to be a Bronco next year.
You do save $19 million by not picking up that club option. Now they're in a pretty decent salary cap spot. They are right now with some of the rollover from last year. It's projected to be about $28 million under the cap. Kareem Jackson is another one of the club options that the decision will have to be made on. There's some undrafted free agents, Justin Simmons, Elijah Wilkinson, and some pretty important restricted free agents, at least in terms of the last couple of years, in Phillip Lindsay and Tim Patrick. So what about just taking care of the guys in-house? And Justin Simmons seems to be kind of he was on a franchise tag last year. He kind of seems to be a guy in the locker room that they want back. Linda, go ahead.
I think if they don't sign Justin Simmons, I think there will be a very negative reaction from Broncos fans in general. He's clearly made himself a dominant piece of that defense. As for the other, I think Kareem Jackson will be back. I hope. I'm not sure about Phillip Lindsay. I love Phillip Lindsay. I want him to be a Bronco. I'm just not sure with them bringing in Melvin Gordon, if they draft a running back. I'm just not sure what him or Tim Patrick's future holds. I think they're going to focus on the defense.
Well, they need to focus on the defense. I also feel, though, with Phillip Lindsay, I mean, he's never played for a team outside of the Denver metro area. Because CU's not ever. Well, because CU's 40 minutes from Denver. Boulder's not far. Played high school, Pee-wee, everything in South Denver. I can't see him leaving simply because I don't think he cares as much about the money. He just moved out of his parents' house 8 months ago.
Really?
Yes, he was living with his parents until 8 months ago. Well, I
love that.
His fiance got pregnant, and I think they were like, well, maybe we should not live in mom's basement anymore. So they moved and got a place. But I mean, his roots are here. His whole family is here. All of his brothers played college ball somewhere in the Denver, Colorado area. I think he'll go to Patton and say, I will take significantly less money than my market value to stay here. As long as it's enough money for me to bank and put away. I think he sticks around. I hope he sticks around. I love
that. Would be me too. Yeah. I adore him.
And they've got to re-sign Justin Simmons. They have to.
Yeah.
They have to.
Well, and that brings us into this next section here in the the rumors and the news, because that's one of the things that it was Jeff Legwold of ESPN who said that there's talk in the locker room right now that like if Justin Simmons is not re-signed and given a long-term deal, there's a lot of guys in the locker room that have no idea what it would take to actually get signed to a long-term deal from the Broncos. That like if he can't, then who can?
I can't foresee the negative reaction to that would absolutely break it would be so bad. It would be really, really bad.
Especially considering we just traded Nolan Arenado. Okay, I'm done. But still, we're tender. Denver sports fan, and it's really hard. Like having grown up in those Elway years as a Bronco fan, like we didn't get to the Super Bowl every year. We got blown out in 3 of them, but we always competed. We were always there. Like we got to the playoffs every year. We had a winning record pretty much every year. Then you had a little hiccup after Elway left. Then Jake Plummer came here, got us to an AFC championship. And then you brought in Jay Cutler, who at least got us like sniffing the playoffs. And then Peyton Manning, obviously, and that was a huge deal. And the year before, Tebow getting us to the playoffs. And
don't forget playoff winning quarterback Tim Tebow. Now, come on.
How could I ever forget him? There's just I think with the fans, it's like at this point, like, come on, guys. Peyton Manning left. It's been a revolving door of quarterbacks and a revolving door of coaches. And it's exhausting.
Can I ask you a question regarding revolving door of quarterbacks?
Yes.
Do you think Trevor Siemian was the best quarterback that we've had in that revolving door?
I do.
Yes!
I really do. Kid was talented. He just didn't have the support.
I know. I loved Trevor. I wanted Trevor Siemian to be a thing so bad. It's the first jersey I ever bought. Like, I wore it. I wore it when we beat the Jets, I think. I was like, I'm going to wear my Siemian jersey.
This is exactly why we do these shows, because I didn't know there was like a contingent of Broncos fans who loved Trevor Siemian. I had no idea.
He wore socks with his Birkenstocks. I wear socks with my Birkenstocks. We're like this.
He's relatable. I got it. So then the attention kind of turns to the draft then, because I think, if you're going to make some moves, it does seem like you got a top 10 pick, number 9 right there. That does seem like maybe you could get some things done. And it even seems like maybe they tried to get Matthew Stafford, potentially including that pick and some pick swaps. The quarterback situation, obviously with Drew Lock, doesn't seem as settled maybe as some of what they're saying. What do you think that number 9 pick, and maybe even like, they got the 40 pick and the 71, and they got some others that may come through with the compensations, but what do you think about what they plan on doing in the draft, and especially with that number 9 pick, Nate?
So that number 9 pick is going to be a cornerback. And there are 2 guys that are kind of in the mix there. And I didn't write their names on my notes, and I'm tired, so I'm sorry. But there's 2 top tier quarterbacks that could go after with that 9 spot. I think that's where they go, because our pass defense was terrible, and losing a guy like Chris Harris, you saw how important he was to this offense or this defense. And they really, Lance Wilson, thank you. They couldn't get it together in the passing game. Deep threat like Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson were holding it down, but they need a cornerback. They do not need another tight end. They have like 8. Mm-hmm. I think they've got some offensive line issues that they could probably work on in the 2nd and 3rd round. I mean, I don't see him going quarterback in the first. Please not Trey Lance. We already drafted Paxton Lynch in the 1st round. Let's not do that again. But yeah, I mean, I think they're working defense and some offensive line in those first few rounds.
You got to quit going to him first, because I'm going to keep looking like a copycat. First of all, you said not Trey Lance, right?
Not Trey Lance, please.
Okay, well, I have a buddy who's set that the Broncos are going to take Zach Wilson, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I would like to see the Broncos take Micah Parsons if he is there at 9.
Yes,
that's the guy that I want to go to the Broncos, and there's not really a whole lot of wiggle room for me on that one. But I agree. I think defense and an offensive line are going to be the two spots they hit the hardest.
Linda, can I change your mind at all on Trey Lance when I say that I had Eric Crocker on the San Francisco 49ers show, and he loves Trey Lance?
I have not finished watching all my film yet, so I actually haven't formed any final opinions on anyone. Nate said not Trey Lance. I said I have a buddy that thinks it's going to be Zach Wilson purely because he's tall, so which is fair.
Another Brock Osweiler.
Oh my God. Dude, he was he finessed the entire league, and now he's just like retired chilling. I'm sorry, but that's a businessman. I respect that.
Totally. He made a lot of money.
Yeah, doing
Tons.
nothing.
He did get the Broncos. He got the Broncos into a Super Bowl, though. He didn't win it for him, but he got him there.
I know. And because of that, he made a lot of money and got to retire.
Doesn't he? He lives on like a ranch in Montana or something now with his family.
You just do whatever the hell he wants. It's fantastic.
Yep.
He played this season, right? Like, didn't he come back, or what was that? Or am I thinking of Blake Bortles? Am I mixing him and Blake Bortles up?
Not this season. He came back. I think it was that. Maybe it was last season, or the Broncos were hurting for a quarterback and they signed him. I think that was last season.
Okay.
Bortles was this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably the one that I'm mixing it up with there. So, okay. So yeah, maybe they answer the question in the draft as far as who's going to be the quarterback, but let's talk a little bit about maybe who else they might be able to bring in. So I'm just going to bring up some names and you just tell me if you would want any of these guys to be quarterback of your Denver Broncos. Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unspeakable things.
What would you give up for Deshaun Watson?
My soul. It's pretty small, but I think it might do it.
Like thinking about what a Deshaun Watson package would look like. I mean, I definitely think that like the number 9 pick would be really enticing, obviously, to the Texans. But I mean, then you'd have to include some future picks, maybe some. I think they were looking for some defensive starters, maybe. And it does feel like if anybody could put together a trade, it would be the Broncos. It does seem like that's at least a possibility. Nate, are there like in the talk shows there in Denver, are people talking about that?
I listen to all of you too much to listen to local sports radio here. So I'm going to be real honest about Denver sports media. Most of them are blowhards and they're never right. They're never right. There's like one guy who's right. Mike Kliss is right on occasion, but for the most part, like you can't really trust anything they say. But I can see it happening. I mean, on the national level, it seems like there's some belief that it's legitimate that the Broncos could make a deal for Watson. I 100% believe they're in the market. I think everybody has to, unless you're, really who? The Chargers are set.
Kansas City,
Baltimore.
Dude, what if Watson goes to the Raiders? Listen, I can't. I don't want that. What if that happens?
Well, I don't want it because, I'm a Broncos fan and don't want to root against Deshaun Watson, but Gruden will ruin his career.
Yeah, that's fair. He did just re-sign Nathan Peterman. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So, and the coolest thing about that is that probably Derek Carr goes back, and then Derek Carr becomes the quarterback of the Houston Texans, which I am here for that. Like, if he fills the shoes of his older brother, that'd be awesome.
That would be
fair.
Awesome. But also, please no.
Yeah, I don't want 3 young, super talented quarterbacks
No.
right now in my division.
Nope.
Unless one's on my team.
Right.
Would you want the Broncos to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah. I'd be yes. Knowing he's a bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be okay with Fitzpatrick.
Jameis Winston?
No.
From a fantasy perspective, I might like that.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
From a moral perspective, I don't like it at all.
Right. The show before this, they said with being in Boston, that wouldn't be good because there's too much seafood in Boston. So Denver seems safer maybe for that, but maybe also worse in other ways. I certainly understand that point. What about like when you think about anybody else, like and let's just not even leave it to quarterback, but it seems like the other skill positions are basically, you've got your guys. I mean, you've got Melvin Gordon, you got Phillip Lindsay. It seems like, I don't know that you would want to make many moves at running back. Especially if you re-sign Phillip Lindsay. Wide receiver, I mean, Courtland Sutton sounds like the most determined person in the world to come back in a contract year next year and make a splash. Like everything that I read, like in preparation for this show about Courtland Sutton made me think, I don't own him in enough places in my dynasty leagues because he seems like he is going to come in and explode. Have you guys kind of seen some of that too?
Yep.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think people in the fantasy scene have forgotten about Courtland Sutton, which I think is a mistake because I think he's shown that he can be a prominent wide receiver regardless of who's throwing him the ball. And now he's got Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler and Noah Fant to take some of that pressure off of him. If we got Deshaun Watson, he would be. I don't think there's any way he's outside of the top 12 running backs or wide receivers. But I think he'll be. I still think he'll be a high end wide receiver to low end wide receiver 1 every week next season.
I mean, I think he was primed to go off this year if he hadn't gotten hurt.
Yep.
I think we're having a different conversation about this season if Courtland Sutton doesn't get hurt. I think he provides for Locke. That's a safety blanket having a receiver like that.
So then let's talk about the other weapons because like it wasn't like he wasn't healthy, and even like Noah Fant started off great, but then he got hurt too and seemed like he was a little hobbled. Now he was tough. Like it was great to see him kind of tough out a lot of games where he didn't seem like he was actually healthy enough to play and did anyway. Jerry Jeudy there was an interesting comment from you, Nate, on Twitter coming into this about a gift that had a catch of his, and you said, "Oh, you found his one catch this year." Now, obviously, he had more than one, but Linda, I'm not going to start with Nate anymore. Linda, we're going to you first. What's your confidence level in Jerry Jeudy? I mean, do you think like he obviously wasn't what I guess a lot of people expected him to be, as there was many people that had him as their number 1 wide receiver in last year's class that didn't seem to pan out. But I still feel like there's a lot of talent there. Are you up on Jeudy? Do you think this is time to buy him in Dynasty, or do you think maybe if he's got value, you can sell him?
I think if you can find somebody that's worried about his drops, you can buy that low. He played with, first of all, 1 game, no quarterback, plus Driscoll, Ripien, and unhealthy Drew Lock. I mean, he played through all of that. Yes, he had some drops. He didn't have a preseason. None of these rookies had a preseason. So that was a big issue for me. We didn't start seeing rookies show any kind of like pizzazz till week 5, 6, and that's because they had played in some games. So I take that into account too. I know we all mock preseason, but for those players, it's absolutely necessary to get used to hitting or being hit by NFL players and stuff. So I'm not nervous about Jerry Jeudy. I think he's gonna do just fine next year, and I think if you can buy low, you buy that dip of everybody worrying about drops.
Nate, talk about your hatred for Jerry Jeudy.
Now, it's not hatred. I really like Jerry Jeudy. He just had a really big drop problem this year. But I've said the same thing about Deontay Johnson. You can fix that. Mm-hmm. You can teach these guys to follow, because it's very simple. If you watch the film on Jeudy and watch his drops, he's just not following the ball into his hands. He's turning his head and thinking about getting downfield or thinking about the defender and not fully securing it. And it's like, bro, you're not Jerry Rice yet. So you can't do those things. You're a rookie who, like Linda said, had no preseason. Like, you're learning a game that is like 5 times the speed of the college game. These guys are bigger, they're faster, they hit harder, and they're smarter. He had a lot to overcome. He's going to be much better next year. And like Scott said, just get him a quarterback who can throw it to him, or get him in a system that allows that quarterback to get him the ball. He'll be fine. If somebody wants to sell him to me on the cheap in Dynasty, I'll take it. 100%. I'll buy it.
Talk about KJ Hamler, because that was a guy I really liked in the draft last year. I like the fact that they went Jeudy and then Hamler again, and kind of double tapped on wide receiver there in the first and second round. I almost couldn't believe that they did it, but I love what Hamler can bring. I mean, and Pat Shurmur runs more free wide receiver sets than any other offensive coordinator in the league. So there's room for Sutton, Jeudy, and him to be fantasy relevant. Linda, did you see anything from KJ Hamler that made you think that he might be a guy that we could be putting in our lineups and starting next year?
I love KJ Hamler. I think he's rosterable. I don't know that like I'm going to put him in a starting position. He may be like a guy I have on my bench to put in a flex spot on a bye week and hope that he gets a home run touchdown. I think he'll be the deep threat, and I'm not sure how much that'll be utilized, particularly next year. And I think I play Dynasty, but I'm definitely more redraft minded. Sorry. And, but I think he'll be a guy that I roster as a bye week safety blanket. And you're hoping this guy catches 40-yard pass and a 35-yard touchdown pass. And that's all you need.
Right.
Afterwards, maybe you can explain this redraft thing to me with the Dynasty Vipers. So I don't know really what that is.
I know. But, I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Nate, what do you think? KJ Hamler.
I mean, in Dynasty long-term, I'm buying him. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's so fast. Like, he's got like Tyreek Hill speed. And I think if going back to Pat Shurmur and whatever that weird offense was that he ran this year in Denver, if he can go back to what he did before, Hamler's a guy that's going to go off. And it's probably not going to be next season unless they bring in Deshaun Watson. If they bring in Deshaun Watson, forget about it, man. Like, we're talking a guy that has the capability to have 10-plus touchdowns next season and eclipse 1,000 yards because he can be a deep threat and because he can get behind the cornerback so quickly. In redraft, though, I agree with Linda. Like, unless it's a deep bench, man, I'm not buying him. Not buying him at all.
Would you rather have this guy, Tim Patrick?
He's a free agent, isn't he?
He's a restricted free agent, meaning you can put like a second round tender or something like that on him,
right.
and he's probably not going to get signed. He does kind of seem like a Bill Belichick guy. I'd be kind of curious if maybe they try to make a play, but they'd have to give up a second round pick. I don't know that they would do that. But
you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Tim Patrick, I love what he can do, but he was put in to fill the shoes of Courtland Sutton. So when Courtland Sutton's back next year, if they were to sign him, and I don't think they will, but if they were to, that would be his role. I don't think he would see very much play time. I'd love to see him go somewhere to be a wide receiver too, because I think this, and if he's going to get an offer, this was the year, and he showed he can do it. So I'm hopeful for Tim Patrick's future. I just don't think it'll be a Bronco. I think I'll have to love him as a fantasy asset, because that's how I like handle the loss of player. I'm like, oh, like I have Shaq Barrett in all my IDP leagues. I'm like, well, I can still love you from afar. So I hope he goes somewhere that I can roster him and still feel really good about it.
Yeah, I
said so many things.
I feel like Linda and I have the same Broncos brain.
That's fantastic news.
I don't know if there are very many Tom Brady fans anywhere. Like I mean, maybe they're in New England, Bob, but maybe in Tampa Bay now.
I am a lifelong Tampa Bay fan. I don't know if you heard, but that's go Bucks.
I thought you were a lifelong Bills fan.
Well, and then they got kicked. I can't do another Chiefs Super Bowl, man. I'm not kidding. I can't do it. And it's not even like, it's like partly because I'm a Broncos fan, and so that sucks. But also my daughter's father is a Chiefs fan. His whole family, Chiefs fans. They talk a lot of smack. And they buy my kid a lot of Chiefs clothes. And it's fine because she's an Oklahoma State fan. So I'm like, I have to like take the good and the bad. And it's bad. It gets violent when the Chiefs win Super Bowls. I learned that last year. I don't want to do it again.
So Cooter
Cooter
is also a Houdat like me. And we're in the opposite position of you because we are not.
I know.
We are not hoping that the Bucks win. They're in our division. I wouldn't really want to see that, but I understand it from a Broncos standpoint. Like watching the Chiefs go back to back, that would be tough.
I
can't.
I know. Last year, by halftime, I was like, I don't really remember the halftime performance, and it really gets dark after that. So this year, I'm thinking I'll just try to beat that by a half of football and be good and gone by the time it starts. That's the plan.
Last guy I want to ask you guys about, Noah Fant. I've got him as my number 5 dynasty tight end. The only guys that I have ahead of him right now, Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Andrews. I've got him ahead of everybody else. I think part of that is Shermer. He's always had really productive tight ends. And I think Noah Fant was targeted really heavily this year, but was hurt. I think part of what slowed him down there, especially in the middle of the year towards the end, was his health. His ankles seemed like a lot of leg injuries from him. What do you think? Like, I mean, you guys watch Noah Fant every Sunday. We'll let Nate kick off this last one.
So my concern with Fant, the talent's there, but the Broncos have so many tight ends that they use on a regular basis because you've got Nick Vannett all of a sudden started to get a ton of looks. Tony Fumagalli was getting looks at the end of the season. If Jake Butt could ever stay healthy, I mean, he would be phenomenal. I think they probably let go of him after this season. I don't think they'll re-sign him, but
I thought he was going to be great, man. I really did.
Too.
I thought he was going to be great.
Who didn't want him to be? With the name Jake Butt,
right.
Everybody was like, please be a good tight end.
Right.
I have all the jokes ready.
The fantasy team names we could do, like, there's just, like, he really let us down.
Right.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, and then you got Alfred Bonham, who they drafted out of Missouri to pair up with Locke. And just as he started to heat up, he tore his ACL. So I just feel like there's so many tight ends for the Broncos that I think Fant is always going to kind of get lost in that. And he's not going to be a top tier tight end unless they let go of all these other guys or he signs somewhere else when his contract's up, which I don't see happening. But talent-wise, sure, I'll take him as dynasty tight end 5. But given the situation, I just don't feel good about that.
Faith was the only one dressed in Patriots gear. Like, I don't know, like, what's wrong with Patriots fans? Like, they don't even like their team. I don't know. It's weird.
I have a Broncos koozie, but I wore Oklahoma State clothes because that's what I wear. Sorry.
If you've never looked at the Albert O, I don't even remember. I don't know how to pronounce it. If you never looked at his player profiler page, his athleticism is crazy. If he ever did get a starting spot, like once he gets healthy, gosh, he could be really good.
What I think something people either don't know or overlook, if the Broncos stick with Locke next year, they combine.
Right.
We have a frozen Nate. Linda, go ahead.
Until he gets back up and going, I'll just say that. Are you back, Nate? All right,
I think
go.
I'm back. Oh, I'm good. I'm done. That was all I was saying.
Okay, so you talked about a crowded tight end room, and I see that. My issue in terms of fantasy is for a tight end, you want a tight end that's going to be one of the top targets on the team. And obviously between Jeudy and Sutton, already he's maybe the third target. I still think he's a top 12 tight end because of the tight end landscape, but I would put Hawkinson over Fant because I think Hawkinson he's the number one option on that offense right now. him and Quintez Cephas. Those are the only two passing. Besides Cam Akers,
Swift.
Thank you. I've gone way too many times back and forth between those two teams over the last week. I don't know who belongs to who anymore. But so I would put Hawkinson in front of Fant. I still think Fant falls directly under Hawkinson, based on talent and what we've seen, especially what he can do after the catch. But I am worried about what his target share is going to look like next year.
Yeah.
I think that just about wraps up a Broncos show right there. We've talked about basically all of the relevant fantasy players, Dynasty here, and kind of what to expect, and what the system that they're going to find themselves in. And look, whatever quarterback winds up landing on this team, I think there are a lot of really good players that you can surround them with that they could be really successful. So, Nate, as we go out, just go ahead, tell us once again where we can find you, your YouTube channel, and how we can make sure we're keeping up with all things Nate.
So at JackFF on Twitter. All of my content is at IBT_media on Twitter. You can find In Between Media on Facebook, In Between Media on YouTube. We are also on Instagram, and we may be firing up a TikTok channel here shortly. Like I said, we got a lot of stuff in the works, man. We're ready to go. So that's where you can find me. It's all my stuff. And thanks for having me on, man. This was a blast. I loved it.
I'm never going to be cool enough to have a TikTok, but
me either. I'm not saying I'm doing it.
Linda, where can we find your TikTok?
Well, I have a TikTok, but I don't make videos. I just scroll on that for like 2 hours, and I'm like, oh, it's time for bed. How'd we get here? But you can find me at Lindellians. From there, you can find my podcast at FF_confidential. And then at Fantasy Besties. I do have a pretty big announcement coming. I think next week around Tuesday is, I think, the aim date for that. So look out for that. But you can just find me on the Twitters at Lindellians, and I'll guide you from there.
Very good. And look, if you haven't listened to the interview, like if anybody's listened that has not for some reason seen the video and listened to your interview with Matthew Berry yesterday, that really was fantastic. It was a tremendous interview. You guys, as Matthew Berry said when he tweeted out, you guys got real. You talked about a lot of very serious things, and it was awesome to listen to him and the who he's become in the industry versus like I remember in college reading his Talented Mr. Roto articles to where he is now, and how, like, if you want to see how to use a platform to empower people, he really is very good at that. And both of you guys are also very good at making sure that you are empowering people too. It's awesome to see both of you guys pumping people up and making sure that you are promoting other people. And you two are like one of the best at that. So I'm really excited that you guys decided to join me today and talk about your Broncos. So thank you so much for coming, for Nate, for Linda, for me at Calvin and Hobby. By the way, Dynasty Vipers, we got some really cool things happening too. Like, definitely make sure you check us out, subscribe to this YouTube channel here, and follow Matt, follow me, follow Jeff, JM Thrive. You'll find the whole Dynasty Viper team if you follow the Dynasty Viper account. And so for these guys, for the Denver Broncos, hopefully it's going to be a great offseason. And we'll catch up again